It's 6:31, so in the interest of everyone's time, and so we have enough time for questions at the end, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Marissa Skaggs, and I serve as president of the Pendleton Town Council.
I can't hear. Hold on. Meeting starting. Sorry.
I don't want to pull your. Okay, I want to make sure that everybody
Is that
can
better?
hear. Can you guys hear now? Okay, awesome. My name is Marissa Skaggs, and I serve as the president of the Pendleton Town Council. Joining me tonight are a lot of our staff. We have Brett Mabry and Jim Cook of the building inspection team, Hannah Rose, Denise, and Stephanie, the planning department, Scott Reske, town manager, Jeff Graham, Pendleton attorney, Willie Bowles, clerk treasurer, and then Chet Babb and I both serve on the town council. By show of hands, who's watched the YouTube link of the last meeting in April? Okay, great. If you haven't watched that, on your handout, there's a QR code that you can scan. It'll take you directly to that link. All of our board and commission meetings, recordings are on there for you to review at any time. So the goal of tonight's session was originally to allow you to feedback things that you had picked up on the previous session. Since we have a lot of new faces tonight, we're going to do a relatively quick overview of the presentation that we've done in March and then again in April. So just so that everybody's dealing with the same information and everybody knows what we're talking about. As we go through tonight's presentation, think along the lines of 3 takeaways. We'll see if this clicker works. Last time it didn't work. Maybe not tonight either. Okay, clicker is done. All right. Think along the lines of these 3 takeaways. Growth is going to happen. We can control the growth through our planning, and we aren't going to grow just for the sake of growing. In order to see where we're headed, we need to understand where we are now. And to do that will be Scott Reske, our town manager. Let's see if we can pass this mic over to him. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Okay, can I still have that clicker?
Yeah, you can try.
It's got a laser.
So it does have a,
Everybody
does have
put your
that.
sunglasses on. Okay, so we all know we're about ready in this community, about ready to experience some growth. So where are we at now and what can we expect? Because those are the 2 things, those are the only 2 things we really know. So the current population right now, based on the census in 2020 we're at 4717, and that's within the town boundaries. Okay, I know a lot of you are here from the township area. Social media got you excited about this. So we're talking just about the town, inside the town boundaries, and most of this presentation is about inside the town boundaries. So what do we think our population is going to be? Our potential population is 40,000 based on the area that's left within the town boundaries that's developable. And we'll show you a map of that in a little bit. The other thing to keep in mind too is not only Pendleton is going to experience this, but Ingalls and LaPel and the unincorporated areas of the other townships, Fall Creek Township, Stony Creek, Green Township, Adams Township, and Markleville. We think the unincorporated areas of Fall Creek Township will see a population of around 60 to 80,000. So just in Fall Creek Township with Pendleton combined, you're roughly seeing maybe up to 100 to 120,000 people in this area. What we don't know is, let me go to the next slide. What we don't know is how fast that is going to happen. It takes several decades. We could see a surge that lasts, 3 or 4 or 5 years. We just don't know how fast that's going to happen. Plus, we don't know the areas of the town that will grow first. A lot of that is dependent on which farmers want to sell their land. If somebody has 20 acres, when do they sell their land? So that's sort of dependent on private decisions. And the other thing too that factors into all this is the economy. Right now, housing starts have declined significantly because interest rates are up. So there's a lot of factors. So we know where we're at. We know where we could be as far as population. How it fills up, that's a big question. Go to the next slide. So this is a map of the area right now. We've got LaPel down here. A lot of people are always surprised how big LaPel town is. And then Ingalls is down here. It's in the purple. People are usually surprised how little ground they've annexed so far. If you talk to their leadership, they're interested in filling up this donut hole here. Here's Pendleton in the green. Markleville over here. You can see Fall Creek Township, the unincorporated areas here. Up here is Anderson. I think this is a little bit of Chesterfield coming in. But you can see Anderson has started to creep a little bit into Fall Creek Township, and they're realizing that State Road 109 can be a huge economic development corridor. So anyway, that's the way the map looks right now. Go to the next slide. All right, this is a planning and zoning map of Pendleton. Let me go ahead and go to the next one. And then this is a sort of the same map, but what we did is the developable area of the town is in the green. So here's I-69, State Road 38. Here's where we're at right now, the downtown. That's the developed area is sorted in the gray. So you know a lot of the population growth, the development will happen here on the west side of the interstate, and then of course up here a little bit and a little bit down here. Most of this right now is all zoned agricultural. So what'll happen if development starts to happen, it's usually farmers start to sell off, and developers come in. Next slide. All right, we looked at 3 towns just to see if we could learn some lessons from them. The first one is McCordsville, and they're experiencing a lot of commercial and industrial development right now, but we thought it was worth looking at because it's off of 70, just like we're off of I-69. The other one is Zionsville. They have a historic downtown just like we do. And they have that hometown feel. And a lot of you, I'm sure, would agree would like Pendleton to keep that hometown feel. And then Fishers, which we all know about Fishers. It's on I-69, just like we are, and we're the next eccentric circle out from their growth. So let's look at what happened with their growth a little bit. All right, this is McCordsville. If you notice here, they were only in 1980, so I graduated, so yeah. There were only 180 people. But then in 2000, they just took off. And they've had this trajectory that is pretty steep. And then also, as you all know, especially I have a brother that lives down there, they are all miserable right now because they've decided to put up big boxes. And instead of doing residential communities, they decided to go commercial, and now everybody is miserable down there. Not very happy. All right, next slide. Okay, here's Zions. Go back to that. So here's Zionsville. This shows their growth. So in 2000, they're just at 8,000, sort of like where we're at. Our actual population right now in the town, we think is about 6,000. There's quite a few homes that are going up since the census. And now already they're at 30,000. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So this is a slide that scares me. Our family business was the exit before there at Castleton in 1980. And Castleton was a liquor store, a gas station, and a restaurant. Then just up the road, the next exit, which was Fishers, they were a whopping 2,000 people, and they had 2 liquor stores, a gas station. Right? But look what happened in 1990. They were 7,500, which is about what Pendleton is now. And then they grew in that one decade, went from 7,000 to 37,000. So this little dot keeps me up at night because I'm worried about this dot. As a town manager, if this happened in a decade, how would we handle it? But it's happened, lesson learned. I got to pay attention. All right, so next slide. All right, so what are the potential pitfalls that we're worried about when there's rapid development? The first thing is loss of identity. I'd like to use the example of Castleton. Most people don't remember that used to be a town. They just think of it as a rundown mall now. But as Indianapolis grew up I-69, it lost its identity. That's the last thing a lot of us would hate to lose is the identity and the history of Pendleton. It's just morph into some bigger Indianapolis. The other thing is the famous traffic congestion that you see when you have rapid growth. It's miserable. The next thing that happens if you allow rapid development to get ahead of you is the neighborhoods get very monotonous, and they're no different than the neighborhoods that are 30 miles down the road or they're down in Atlanta, Georgia. They just start to look all the same. The other thing that happens is your strain on your infrastructure, not only the infrastructure that exists, and like in our town is already older, and then you're hooking on new water lines, power lines to that, storm lines. It puts a real strain on what already exists. And then, of course, you got the strain of adding new infrastructure all the time for the new development. The next one is the thing that was pounded into me. I'm a civil engineer, but I have a master's in public administration. And if the one thing I walked away with after 3 years of that school was revenue always lags demand. Whenever you have growth, your revenue can never keep up with the growth. So you're always behind. So you've got to be really smart what you do. The other pitfall with displaced local businesses. What happens a lot of times, of course, is a small town shops, mom and pop shops that we all love, they get displaced by the big boxes, the chain stores, the chain restaurants, that sort of thing. And that's just never pleasant. And the one thing that those chains look for, yeah, they look for population, but they look for the rate of growth, because they want to locate there early and then ride that wave of that growth. It's more profitable that way. So they're able to buy ground at cheaper, population down. Sort of confusing myself, but as you can imagine, it's better to get in early when a town is growing. If you're a big box store. The social disconnect, what happens there is you live in a small town, you know everybody, and next thing you know, you don't know anybody. It feels like everybody's a stranger. The other thing is that if you're not careful, the neighborhoods that are being built, they're not connected well. And so your whole world, your hometown experience is just that little neighborhood that you live in. So there's a lot of social disconnect. Believe it or not, people talk about this one a lot. Municipal debt. This is tied in with revenue lagging demand. There's a lot of pressure to build your roads to keep up with population growth, and so it's real easy to go into debt. And we'll talk about some ways the town can avoid that here in a second. There's always water issues, no matter what. People on wells, whether they live in town, out of town. Eventually, get too many people in there. Everybody's more and more people. You can imagine instead of 4,000 people on a well, now you have 40,000 people on a well. It's a lot different situation. And then stress on public safety. Police departments, when they're growing rapidly, have a real hard time having an experienced police department. Right? Even an experienced policeman that comes new to a town, let's say he did a lateral transfer, he still has to learn the town, let alone he also has to learn how to be a police officer. Same thing with the fire departments. Okay. So those are not all the potential pitfalls. Those are just some of them. So what is our strategy for steering development in the town to help mitigate some of those pitfalls? The first is you enhance quality of life. So you focus on quality of life, not the quantity. The next thing is you stay ahead of the growth. And we'll talk about each one of these here in detail in a second. And then protect the town from debt. So that's the three main strategies, and let's look at them individually here. So quality of life is first protect Pendleton's identity and its historic nature. You want to feel like you belong somewhere. So if you do those two things, that's the first thing about quality of life. The next one is to invest in quality of life. Even though infrastructure, you may have a lot of pressure to keep the infrastructure up with the growth, don't forget to invest in those things that make it a nice community. When we talk about economic development, we're talking about focusing on the quality of life and not the quantity, right? The next thing is keep expanding our park system. We have one of the largest park systems in anywhere compared to the population that we have. We'll stay on top of that. The other thing is safeguard property values. Nobody that lives here should pay the price for growth. Here before the growth happened, a lot of you don't want the growth. It'd be silly to make you pay for the growth, something that you didn't want. So always when we're planning as a community, we want to make sure we're safeguarding property values. Okay, strategy 2. Okay, strategy 2 is how do we stay ahead of the growth? First of all, don't deny that it's going to happen. Fishers did that for a long time, trust me. The next thing is constantly planning. You know, that's on us as a staff, but it's also on the community. Don't let the community just get in the cycle of just building and building, but not continue to adjust your plans. You moved on me. The next thing is always plan together. And a lot of the plans you're going to see here in a second, those were all heavy with citizens' input at every level. The way we tried to do things here under this town council and my administration is citizen input on almost every level. Learn from other communities, which we're talking about now, and then adopt and adjust plans as necessary. Everybody knows that Peyton Manning was a wonderful passer, but the other skill he had, he knew how to adjust once he got up to the line and read what the defense was going to do. He was going to adjust. All right, so how do we protect the town from debt? We make development pay its own way. In other words, if somebody builds out here, they buy 100 acres off one of the farmers and they want water run out there, we're going to make them pay for that main. All right, that's a good example of that. They tear up the road around it. From now on, if they tear up the road, they're going to rebuild it. Or ahead of time, we're going to make them put in a heavier road and replace that little skinny county road that development's on. Always try to integrate projects. So if we do one project and we're spending money on something, we're going to do that and do multiple improvements. A classic example is we just did Franklin Street that was severely damaged by the tornado. So when we did that street, the street needed to be rebuilt. So we got funds from the state for community crossings. They paid for the street part. The storm sewer, there was a lot of flooding in those basements. We got feedback from the community, so we improved the stormwater. In fact, we put in a new stormwater line. And then we planted trees and that sort of thing. So not only do you want to do multiple benefits when you do a project, it also should have multiple community improvements. We should also have multiple community benefits. So you build a new road, we'll go ahead and put the trail in. Put a 8-foot wide trail right there for bicycles and pedestrians. That's an example of, you could just put in a road. Let's put in a trail, maybe a little park there, a little mini park would be a good idea. Some cases, and then always try to use multiple funding sources, not just town money. Excellent. So what's the metric? What do we think the metric would be if we're doing this right? In the end, does Pendleton still feel like Pendleton as we grow? 20 years from now, it doesn't feel like Pendleton anymore, then you didn't do it right. It's sort of hard to go back. So that's the metric that if we're doing this right. Okay. All right. So what are the tools? This is the boring part. All right. What are the tools that we've put in place for steering this development? There's 3 main ones. The first one is a unified development ordinance. What we did is took all our old ordinances about development and using citizen input, we restructured that development or that ordinance for development, and we now have the highest building standards, architectural standards in the county and really in this whole area. The other thing is the comprehensive master plan, which is basically talking about what the town wants to do as a future. And the other thing that we put into place is a road impact fee and a park impact fee. these are two important things that help us not get into debt. So if you're a developer, for every home that you put in, there's roughly let's just round it up, a $10,000 fee that goes towards improving the roads that we have to improve because you're bringing all this traffic into town. So as we know, it jams up downtown here at a population of 6,000. Can you imagine what it is at 40,000 if we didn't do those things? So that's an example of development paying for itself. Same thing with the park. There's going to be more and more people using the park, so we want to continue to expand the park. So they also pay a park impact fee that's around $3,000 per month. If they bring in commercial development, then it's even more than use it for. We have some other things, a more specific plan on what will happen around I-69. And then our street standards, our thoroughfare plan, we want to know now where we're going to put those roads ahead of the growth. All right, it's a little bit too late if you have to put a road through a subdivision that's already built. Well, if you know that you planned ahead and knew that road was going to be there, then the developer has to build around where that road is going to go. A bike and pedestrian plan, our historic preservation design guidelines, which preserves the downtown buildings that give us our characteristics, and then the park and recreation master plan. And the next slide. So this is on your handout, and what it shows is those plans and how they help address each one of the pitfalls that we listed. So I won't bore you and go into detail. So what's the takeaways? We got to accept that growth is going to happen. We can protect the town through planning and staying ahead of it. And we're not going to grow just for the sake of growth. I don't know how many people have told me this. Scott, cornfield stays a cornfield. It's okay. And I totally agree with it. I am not anxious to fill up a cornfield with a bunch of homes. So, but if it happens, it happens. Let's go to the next slide. Here, if you want to make contact with our planning department, here's their phone number. Planning Commission meets the first Wednesday of each month at the town hall, 7 p.m. Hannah is our planner. Denise is our assistant planner. Here's their email addresses if you have any specific questions. Okay, thank you for sitting through the presentation. Now, what we intended to do, as Marissa said, was to actually go right into questions and anticipated the people that showed up for the first two, but this is a lot bigger crowd than we had the first two, and there's an elephant in the room, and we'll address it here in a second. So what we'd like to do is first, though, ask if there's anybody that has questions on the presentation. Okay, nobody has any questions on the presentation. So we saw what happened on the internet and the talk that went on. There was a rumor that the town was going to start annexing everybody. What that came about from what we think that came about. In both sessions, the first question that was asked is from people who live outside the town. They asked the question, what about the people who are right outside the town? We're going to experience the same thing, but the county is not as aggressive as the town is as far as addressing those pitfalls that we talked about. For that whole 460 square miles of the county, their planning staff is the same size as ours. So the town is investing in being aggressive in trying to develop in the correct fashion. All right. So the question quickly became, can the township and the town merge? So let me explain what that is. First of all, annexation, forced annexation in Indiana is against the law. Voluntary annexation is the law. That's the only way you can annex ground. So, but there is another thing that was put into place years ago when Mitch Daniels was the governor. If you remember, he wanted to eliminate the townships. And the compromise that they came up with is that townships, any entity of government in Indiana, which is counties, cities, towns, and townships can merge. You can have 2 townships merge, you can have 3 townships merge, you can have 2 counties merge, you can have 3 counties merge. You can have a city and a town merge, you can have 2 cities merge. But what we've seen in the handful of cases that have happened, it's been a town and a township have merged. The closest one to here where that happened was Yorktown about 12 years ago merged with their township because Muncie was starting to circle around Yorktown. And they felt to protect the town and to keep that community all one, the township, people lived in the unincorporated area, the people who lived in the incorporated area, to keep that as a community and not become Muncie, they merged. And then so Muncie wasn't able to merge back around. The other one that has done this recently that I think of as is of interest is Zionsville has a historic downtown just like we do. And their town boundaries were pretty close to the historic area. And what they felt that the county wasn't aggressive enough and had strict enough, good enough architectural standards and building standards. What they were worried about was vinyl villages would be right up against their historic buildings within a few blocks. And they felt that would totally ruin the nature of the town. And so the people who lived in the township didn't want to see vinyl villages out there. So they decided to merge. They actually merge or consolidate with 2 townships and the town of Zionsville and created one town. So anyway, that's a little bit of history. I know the internet has a habit of taking something and turning it all sorts of different ways, portraying something that didn't really happen. But anyway, that is what has happened. I'm sure that's why a lot of you are here. And so we're now open for your questions about anything about growth, merger, annexation, a new fire territory.
Do we have any questions? Do we have any from online? Okay.
Yes, sir.
You said that you cannot manually
Mandate.
not manually make somebody come in.
Right.
But can you in merger? Can you?
So the way a merger works, let me explain that. You can merge. So what happens is that's several steps. First of all, the township board has to have a public hearing. Same with the town council here would have to have a public hearing about that. And then they would have the public input, and then they would vote. And they're voting to agree to put a plan together if the merger did happen. So as a joint effort, you put the committees together to address different issues in the plan. It usually has a lot of citizens input. Zionsville did a great job of this, and they had committees on public safety, taxes, infrastructure, parks and recreation, and then some other things. And then they decided what their plan is. For example, for the police department, for the first 3 years, they opted to go ahead and have a contract with the sheriff's department to do the patrolling in the former unincorporated areas. And so that gave the police department time to grow their police department. They actually created 2 different taxing rates, one for the areas out in the formerly unincorporated areas, and then one inside the town. So those were 2 of the main points that I remember reading about their plan. But anyway, you put the plan together, and then you have a referendum. And before you have that referendum, you have it during a general election. You have to have 3 public meetings on the plan. And then the referendum is on the plan. All right. If the plan succeeds, then in that plan, there's a date where the switch gets flipped and the township and the town become one entity. The threshold, that can be decided. It could be, I forget, you can decide it could be as low as 50 and I think up to 70%. So you can establish the threshold. Right. I think between the town council
Township.
and the township, they decide.
51 to 75.
It's 51 to 75. So you've done this. All right.
So I have a question. When you did all of the research on all the different surrounding areas and growth, did you compare the increase in taxes, like places like you're discussing that did the merger? How much do people see as far as increases in taxes and fees that they aren't currently experiencing in the country, because taxes have gone up significantly recently?
So this is a good question. So we all know the fire territory was formed, right? So Ingalls, Pendleton, Green Township, and Fall Creek Township created a fire territory. Part of the requirements is that they had to do a financial study. They did a study parcel by parcel, so they knew how it would affect each parcel in that new fire territory. So basically the two townships. What they found is that 85% of the parcels in town that were residential, in the fire territory that were residential, didn't see an increase because they were already hitting the tax cap. So our initial thoughts are that when you merge a township and the town, will probably experience the same thing, because those are a subset of the same homes that we just studied for the fire territory. However, we are in anticipation of this, because we know this is going to be an issue, is that we've asked the consulting firm of Baker Tilly to do a parcel by parcel study and look at what would happen with the tax rate if the two merged.
So I have a follow-up question to that, being that, so say the majority of folks don't see an increase in their taxes because they've already reached that cap,
Right.
but the percentage of folks who haven't reached that cap, perhaps they're lower income and they can't afford additional taxes,
Yeah.
but say they paid off their farm or they paid off their property, and now they've seen a significant increase, and on a fixed income, they can't afford that. How do you plan to address things like that?
So I think the first step is you see what the study comes out. I would guess that it would be very similar to the fire territory. And it's, did you read the study?
No, I did not read
Because
this.
most of the 50% that would see an increase were lower income. But we're also dealing with Green Township and Ingalls. So I know there's a significant difference in the average household incomes between these two townships. So, you know, we got to do our own study, and we're in the process. We realize we've got to do some homework to address this question. When you do the transition plan, that's when you can make some decisions on how you would address it. Like in Zionsville, they initially had two different taxing rates. The difference between Pendleton is tax rate is 15% higher than the township, right? And the only other fee that we think that you would see if we merge is Pendleton has a stormwater fee. We have some significant stormwater issues, but also in the county, there is decades old significant stormwater issues.
So, and that's the $12.
$12 a month.
So, and that's per month. So what about folks who own multiple parcels where that's going to start adding up to,
So,
a couple $100 a month, and then you're looking at over,
yeah.
I mean, so that's like a significant increase in taxes in and of itself. And it's not-
So the $12 a month, it's on your property tax. What we do is if you have a property, let's say you have a house that is built on 3 strips of street, separate parcels, and they were strips, and that's just the way it came. You know, we've seen that on your property, or maybe you have a house on one parcel and right next door is your garage, and it just happens to be on another parcel. We treat that as one parcel.
What about all of the surrounding agricultural parcels? that would
Agricultural
be
ground.
associated?
Agricultural ground is treated because there's no development on it. That is, if it's 10 acres or 100 acres, it's $12 a month. So that's undeveloped ground
per parcel. So
No, if it's
somebody-
combined, if it's adjacent and it's, you would look at it and go, that's the same piece of ground.
So if
it's
somebody
adjacent-
has, say, 14 parcels and they're all adjacent, it's all under
Yeah,
the same
it'd be
ownership,
$12
it'd be one $12 fee,
$12
regardless of
fee.
the number of structures. that are
Right.
on it.
And then in a lot of cases, you'd have a farm ground or a farmhouse that's part of a parcel that's farmed, right? So that it would only be $12 for that, let's say 30 acres in the house that's either in that parcel or adjacent to that parcel. We call that vacant and adjacent. So it gets treated as one.
Yeah, I have a question.
We gotta take the mic out so we don't get repetitive questions. We'll have you just, I'll get the mic close to you so you can hear, so they can hear.
Okay. I want to know what
Will the taxes be raised on agricultural ground, your barns, your silos, your farm homes? I want to know what the taxes are going to be increased to compared to, you know, what you're paying. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I just answered. So we're doing a financial study. It'll be parcel by parcel. And we'll look at how that works. And then agricultural ground is set by a formula. So whether you're in the town or outside the town, that's predetermined. What the assessed value is.
So it's not gonna be any different than what the county currently charges on taxes. It'll be
Right.
the same.
The assessed value would be the same, right?
For all agricultural structures, houses on ag land,
Right.
silos.
That's all done by the county. That doesn't change. If you could go to the map that shows the zoning map. At the end of the area. Where's my clicker? Where's my clicker?
It's a Denise has it.
Where's my clicker? So anyway, there's a lot of farm ground.
It's in your pocket.
In my pocket.
That's what Denise said.
I don't,
Yeah. Use a helicopter.
But anyway, you can talk to the farmers who've already experienced this. There's quite a bit of farm ground that's already in the town boundaries, and you could ask them exactly what happened. But we are going to do a study, and you'll know parcel by parcel how you would be affected.
Station 80. Station 80.
So I can't tell you how that works. We got to do a study. Well, I hope they get done in a few weeks.
Scott, that 1% cap is only, 1% cap is only good as long as you don't get reassessed, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, we don't assess this. The county does the assessment. So the question is, so that one is, you're right. But you got to remember, the value of land is going to go up because of the development. As farmers start to sell their 100 acres, 80 acres, whatever, the price of ground is going to go up. So everybody's value should raise almost proportionally, right? So we're seeing it now with homes, existing homes, their value is going up. So as long as everybody's going up, you're still property tax cap is probably still factoring.
There's a question.
Yeah.
So I just want to confirm, that if there's a merging of the township and town, it ultimately becomes a force that makes it. Because there's no option out of that. So if there's a merger, then everybody's in.
Right. Well, except for the areas of Anderson that are already here.
But there's no choice at that.
Right. So it's, it's a referendum.
It sounds like there's no force, but ultimately there is a force.
Right.
And that's why
If
we're
the
not.
town-
I mean, you could look at it that way, but yeah, I mean, it's not.
That's
Yeah.
the law.
Yeah.
You can force it.
But I can't. Well, I
It'd be
mean,
in the back.
if I go to you and say you're gonna come into Pendleton, that's a forced annexation. We can't do that. But if you come to me and say, I like to come into the town, then that's a voluntary annexation. Then the other way is the merger, which is a referendum. You get a vote on it, right? You might not like the results,
Ultimately, it's a forfeit.
in a way, yeah.
But
Yeah.
you get set that percentage.
If you don't want it, it's forced. If you want it, it's voluntary, you know?
But I have not.
Right, yeah.
So my question, first of all, thank you for all this. It's really good information. Appreciate you guys putting this together. I know it's a lot of hard work. But the timing of this, right? You talked about it's gotta be a referendum, there has to be a plan put together, there's gotta be multiple meetings. Is this even started where you guys are talking with the township yet?
Yeah.
So it's already in discussion.
So I bet so the question is, have this discussion come up? So I did go to a township meeting and I said, hey, this is several months ago. I said, I've got people coming to me, they've got water problems and they're asking about merging with the township. So I was upfront and said, this is what's happening. Giving you the warning shot, right? So, you know, there's pluses and minuses to it. And I think we've all decided there needs to be another meeting after the homework and the study is done to come up and present that study, talk about the pros and cons, right? Because there's some good things and there's some bad things. The bad thing for me with the merger is that's a lot more work for me, you know, I mean, as you can imagine. So other people are gonna see nothing but cons to it. They like their country living or whatever. But the reality is country living is gonna go away and it's gonna go away a lot faster if you're in an unincorporated area because you don't have those protections. Ask the people at 800 West and 800 South the panic they had when they realized the Vinyl Village was going in. I am not kidding. I'm not making this up. One day I got 5 phone calls with people panicking. Will you please annex my parcel? Can you annex this ground that they're about ready to develop? And I was like, no. First of all, you're not even in our township. You're out there in Green Township. So a lot of people are opposed because they think that merger means their country living goes away. The developers make money by putting up houses cheaply and quickly. So they look for areas that don't have impact fees. They look for areas that have very poor standards. And guess what? That's where they go and that's where they build. And one of these days, if you're in an unincorporated area, you're gonna have a vinyl village in that cornfield that was a cornfield last year. And all of a sudden it's gonna be 120. Well, so you're asking about so both those were put in before the UDO. Carrick Land and Hunsinger Farms would not meet the standards now under this new UDO. So if you want to know, if you want to get a visually look at what this UDO means, go look at Carrick Land, go look at Hunsinger Farms and know that those homes wouldn't be good enough. We're not saying they have to be high-end homes, but the architectural standards and the building quality and the access management we've upped our game because of what we're starting to see. The county has not done that, and they probably are not motivated to do it.
There are many town codes that do not necessarily represent our way of life in the township. I've got a list, if you'd like to hear some of what I
Sure.
skimmed off the top.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wrote this whole thing, I'm gonna skip through some of it because it's already been addressed. But I said there's many town codes that would be in conflict with township's way of life. We're in the middle of planning, I didn't have time to do a deep dive into all of them. I have a small list, but I skimmed the surface, the Pendleton codes, what I'd like to highlight. Chapter 91.08 is commercial animal establishments. There's a very good and clear definition of livestock, which is important because it makes the rest of the code apply to livestock and farms. 9108 pertains to commercial animal establishments. Section A describes that all establishments must not constitute a public nuisance. Section D says that the establishment must provide the level of care provided for in the town's animal control ordinances to all animals kept on the premises. And F says the establishment shall permit the police department to inspect any and all times the premises where the animals are kept. As you can see from these loose interpretations, it could cause an unnecessary burden on our local farms, public nuisance laws and agriculture, along with police that are not trained in animal husbandry, could have a disastrous consequences for our local farms. There's also a section 30.35 that has rules for trucks and other commercial vehicles. I understand there's an exemption for agricultural vehicles, but it's not clearly defined that this also includes shipments to farms from commercial operators. It is very clear, though, that commercial vehicles are allowed on state roads and interstates only. Will a new neighbor that now lives in the town of Pendleton near the after the merger and does not like my semis coming down the road be able to make life hard on me when my family has been operating the same land in Madison County for 165 years? Nuisance laws tend to have that effect. There's also a couple more though. There's one that I really like to highlight, and this actually happened to my uncle, Tom Giver Gilmore, and some people out on Old State Road 132. 130.01 is the discharge of firearms. And it states that no person shall discharge any dangerous weapon, including a firearm, pellet gun, BB gun, bow and arrow, within or into the town, except for an authorized law enforcement officer in pursuit of his duty. B, any person who is attacked or reasonably believes himself in danger of attack, an injury of personal property, and discharges any weapon, reserve, and within his safety or the safety of his property, which makes sense. And any organization registered with the police department and approved by the purpose of practicing supervised archery within the designated area, not open to the general public. D is my favorite because it doesn't help. It was created before my uncle and some of his friends. When they annexed, which is now illegal, happened in the early 2000s, my friends and family lost their right to hunt and recreationally use their firearms and defend their livestock on their farms and property. Provision D, if you were to read it, carves out their parcels alone and lets them have and discharge firearms so that they did not lose their Second Amendment rights. I feel that provision D is going to get much, much larger if this merger was to continue to happen. And I'd like to say one thing in closing. If all my neighbors that have came out here will let me speak for them, there will be unintended consequences with this township merger. I understand that your protections, perceived protections, are well-founded and have good intentions. However, I am not interested in the perceived protections because it would definitely trade for my liberties and freedoms that we have right now in Fall Creek Township. Thank you.
And what was the first one on the list?
Animal husbandry.
Okay, animal husband. So this would be, first of all, anything that exists would be grandfathered in, right? So all the UDO and all that stuff applies to new development as it happens. Okay, so if it's pre-existing, then you're good.
But what if in the future our kids want to have
What
something?
if I want to add another 200 heads on?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's farm business.
So
That's
part
the way it
of
works.
that's why you vote on the transition plan. And part of that could be, it sounds like to me that would be something we would need to address. Maybe have a committee right on that addresses those issues. And that would be part of the merger plan. Just like Zionsville, they had what they call the Old Town area and then the rural area. They had different rules that apply. Now the guns, there's certain areas you can discharge a firearm in Pendleton, certain areas you can't. I'm not familiar with particular parcels. We can look at it. We can look at it. Yeah, we can look at it offline, but as Mark Farr said, he owns a farm in the town. He's got horses. And he
My
has
problem
a
is
fire.
with Mark Forrest, who my boys might have to deal with down the road in 50 to 75 years. That is my problem.
Right.
My concern today.
But I would also tell you that when you've got a population of 30,000 in the unincorporated area, places you can discharge your firearm, it's gonna be very limited. So growth is gonna naturally limit it anyway, in areas where there is growth.
Then we need to keep them out.
Illegal hunting in Marion County.
Yeah.
Seriously, you have to get doe tags.
That's fine. I'm a deer hunter.
That's the city of
I'm a deer hunter. I could get 3 or 4
Why was
a year.
D carved out for
I don't
those
know.
individual ones?
I don't know.
Because it's in your code.
I wasn't here. I don't know. Jeff, do you know?
It was
Before my time.
Well, my-
So,
how-
so let me just go down here. What was the next one?
Semis.
The semis, if it originates from here, making the delivery here, free range, right? So that's, I know that issue came up when we restricted it a long time ago, and we made State Road 38 a local town instead of a state road. People were worried about their semis. The only semis that are restricted is those interlopers that come through town because GPS told them to. If you're delivering or you're picking up, or it's your farm or whatever, that's always been the rule. I don't know. Believe me, I'm out here screaming at semis all the time.
So-
People make fun
Well,
of me.
on the animals especially, I understand that there's a conflict right now going on in Pendleton for beehives.
Yeah.
That are not livestock, but it is definitely being tried to be persuaded as a public nuisance or something for beehives.
So,
They're insects, and I don't
so
want to put an animal.
So there is a lot of beehives in town. There is one parcel in particular where the bees are obnoxiously aggressive. The neighbors have complained, they're getting stung. We've been there, we got swarmed. I don't know what's going on with that type of bee. We're gonna offer that some isolated public ground that they can move their beehive to, because the beehives are important, right? Don't want to get rid of the bees, but the only compromise we can come up with is that he's right, this is right in
I
town.
understand, but
Yeah,
it's the public nuisance. We can, at some point, it won't be fun to farm here anymore.
yeah.
If I've got a neighbor that moves in and decides I'm a nuisance.
You know, you're gonna have that problem if you're surrounded by.
But right now, with the county's lax rules, they have not as many avenues for persecution.
Well, vote against it. But I do, but seriously, this is something you can address when you put the transition plan together. And if the transition plan you feel adequately protects you, you know. If it doesn't, then it doesn't.
That's what you're in, you're in. There's nothing we can do.
The areas that are being considered for a merger, is that all shown on this map or
Yeah, let's
is it
go back to
extended
that.
from there?
So just to make sure that's clear.
Sure, it's not sure.
I found it here on the building. Okay, so if the referendum was to pass, so the new boundaries would look like this. So it'd go up the red line, down around, stay out of Anderson. This little pocket would come into the township. And then the boundary would look like this, go all the way down to the county line to the south, come up, and then it would extend into Green Township. And then this also, like I said, this is also.
How many square miles are we talking about?
So the town is 13. So whatever this is minus.
Township was incorporated is 43 square feet, square miles.
Yeah, it's 7 by 6, so 43. It would be big.
I got us some interested, vacant land, farmland. That's in the street. Through that farm without permission or. How would you treat the vacant? land?
Oh, if there's a development, in other words, we have to build new roads. So if you, all those plans that we showed earlier, one of them is a thoroughfare plan. So the question, did you guys hear the question? So what has happened to vacant land if there's a planned road in the future? How is that handled? So the thoroughfare plan lays out some basic alignments of where these new major roads would go to handle the new traffic. What would drive those roads being built is if development happens in that area. So some of those roads, if the farm ground stayed farm ground, you would never see it. They would still, the roads that are out there would probably just look like the county roads that you have now. So in most cases though, when a developer comes in, we're gonna make him upgrade the roads around his development. The classic case of that not happening was 600 South at the north end of Carrick-Lynn. When they came in, they didn't demand that they rebuild that road. If they were to come in now, we would demand that they rebuild 600 South, make it wider, have wider shoulders, have trails along it, and make the pavement thicker. Does that answer your question?
She didn't want to say folks.
My concern is with the architectural standards that you keep talking about, and you keep calling neighborhoods that people enjoy living in, finding villages. I have a problem. And so what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to, with this process, press that onto everywhere. So basically making it a whole lot less affordable for my grandkids to be able to live here. I mean, those homes are people's homes, and there's people that want to live in Summer Lake or other neighborhoods that don't deserve the grading terms. Those serve a purpose. You know, they're starter homes. Let's call them starter homes. And wouldn't meet the UDO, and that's what they're wanting to do in the whole township. So when you want your elderly parents to have a come down home that is affordable, they can't live here. When your grandkids want to have a home here, they're not going to be able to afford it, just like Carmel. Is that what we want for Pendleton? It's not what I want. It's not what I want.
So the architectural standards doesn't mean that it has to be a 4,000 square foot house. You can have condominiums, you can have townhouses, and they can be a lot smaller. We've had people come in with, talk to us about tiny homes, all right? As long as those meet the architectural standards, that's okay, right? It's not about size and how elaborate it is, but the architectural standards protect against what a lot of people that live in some of the vinyl villages are really mad about, because they feel like they were rough. They were poorly built, they were quickly built with shoddy materials, and they didn't have to be. All that it meant was that developer had an extra 10 feet on his yacht because he used bad material. You can have good architectural standards and not be expensive. Right?
We have several different designations of single family zoning or architectural standards, correct, Tana? So, I mean, we allow vinyl. But there are things that we are going to be staunch about, like the width of a street. Like in order so that the emergency vehicles and school buses can safely get down those streets. Like there's certain non-negotiable things, regardless of what you actually see on the outside of a house, that we are very strict about.
It can't be the same design house after house. That's another example. That doesn't cost any money to have a different variance in your design, right? That doesn't have cost, right? Monopoly standards. Okay.
And another problem out, especially out in Summer Lake, and I'm retired from the federal fire department. Jake, you can back me up. When one house catches on fire, they were built so close together that we've actually, 3 catches on fire. And just as a safety. And I live in, I don't know, I live out there. So, have a little more ground between tunnels. Safety forces, so, more of that, so. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
Livings have been made for years and years on this. It's kind of done. Why? A lot of people work. There isn't.
I agree. It means vacant structures. That's, he had a problem with using the word vacant on vacant ground. He says that can't be offensive because there's agricultural that is being built on that ground. And I would agree with that. It's just an abbreviated way of saying ground is vacant structures, which is important when you're talking stormwater.
Thanks. A couple comments and then a couple questions. So I know a lot of people in here and we seem to have a miscommunication. A lot of us out in the township, because we're not connected with the town directly, don't follow the website, don't follow the communication. So a lot of people felt a little shocked that this was the third, right? Shame on me, shame on whoever, that if we could have a little better communication out to the people in the township. I think we all know now to check the website to see what's happening. So just a comment.
Do the website.
It was posted. It was posted.
How do we get involved with the township? Is that
Let him
something-
finish.
How do we
Let
get more involved?
John, let him finish.
So secondly, your analysis on the 3 different town locations. Just one comment about those. Those all seem closer to the epicenter of Indianapolis, right? So the faster growth. The studies that have been done or being done, historically, what are we looking at from our growth from the last 10, 15, 20 years? It doesn't seem like it's been that much. It's on the fringes. So my question to that is, what's the timing? What's the urgency now? There's a lot more people located in the northern part of Fall Creek Township than there is the southern part. The voting of us, voting on you, we don't have the rights to do that, right? But you guys are making decisions for us, that affect us. The township people, obviously we do. So understanding what's your timing to get this done, what's your communication been, and what the acceptance with the township board people have been as you've approached those. I'd love to hear your responses on those.
Me? Sure. So the original point of this was the presentation. A lot of our UDO and those plans originated during 2020 and 2021 when public meetings were limited. So the point of the presentation was to clue in the actual town residents of what all of our planning documents were. If you followed along, and I'm sure you've heard about this isn't a secret, we've had a few projects get floated at Planning Commission and BZA and things like that that have had a lot of public attention about them that were deemed negative by a lot of residents. So we felt like staff and council felt as though there was a disconnect even between our own residents and the documents that we had put in place over the last 2 or 3 years. So what you see in the presentation is what the goal of the presentation was, which was to clue people in that we recognize that there are pitfalls. We recognize that this is kind of an uncertain time for the town, but here are the things that we've done proactively to address and make sure that we're going to grow in a quality manner and also safeguard your quality of life. So that's what the presentation, the point of it was. However, at both meetings in March and in April, the very first question that happened was, have you ever considered merging with the township? Or how can I join the town? And so that's what you saw. And if you watched the Zoom meeting or the YouTube video, it was a concentration of folks from the northern part of Fall Creek Township asking the question. And that's where we are today. And so I want it to be clear, because we kind of talked a lot about the merger tonight. There has been no agreement set between Fall Creek Township or the town of Pendleton to pursue this. It would have to originate between both of those two entities with a memorandum of understanding that would then spell out exactly how we intend to research this all together. Yes, Scott's talked about the financial study. That's the first question that I know that the township is going to have, as well as ours. Our number one question is going to be, what's the impact of this on the taxes for our residents? And so that's where we sit right now. I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that that this is the third meeting and we've already decided this is what we're going to do. No, this is the third meeting. The first meeting and the second meeting were identical presentations that just had different public comment at the end. The first meeting was at the community building in Falls Park, so it didn't have Zoom capability. So the second one, we were sure to have it here so that we could record it and put it on YouTube so that everybody could watch it. And that was the point. So I want it to be abundantly clear that the train has not left the station. There has been no memorandum of understanding. We are at the very beginning of this, even asking the question and trying to figure it out. I do not have a fleshed out timeline. I mean, I know that in order to get it on the ballot in 2024, if anybody decides to do that, that the cutoff is like August 1st of 2024 to provide the language to the election board. But I would have to work all the way back. We don't even have any of that data. Like, this is a lot of unanswered questions right now. But what I can tell you is what we did the presentation on, which are the documents that the town has passed. And that's where we sit right now, is just showing our residents. And if you guys, and I'm glad you guys are here and you know what we're doing too. And you can see our zoning codes and what the map of what's going to happen or what we would like to happen. And that's where we are right now. I think the scary thing is that when you see that growth on this chart from 1990 to 2000, and they tripled their size, quadrupled their size, like once the train leaves the station, we're on an irreversible path.
Are they putting in a new interstate? Because that's when 69.
No, but even, okay, go from 2000 to 2010. I mean,
Yeah, no, the interstate was there. I worked in Castleton. That's our family business. I knew why there was 2 liquor stores and a restaurant there. I drove by it every day. I didn't stop at the liquor store. I wasn't 21 yet. It was 18 back then. But anyway, that was on it, the interstate. Look at exit 10. Remember Amish furniture forever? Then all of a sudden, Hamilton Town Center. The point is,
and I guess if that's
once it starts, it doesn't stop. And it just keeps getting faster and faster and faster. And so Kent, to your question, when's it gonna start? I don't know, but you got the sense it's starting to happen. How fast is it gonna happen? I don't know. We know how big or what the population of the town could be. We could pretty much use the same logic and guess what the population of the township is going to be. And trust me, the growth is not going to happen. It'll happen in Ingalls and Green Township first, and then the unincorporated areas of the township. Why? Because the developers go where they don't have regulations and they don't have impact fees.
So that still gives us plenty of time.
Yeah.
The economy's on a downslide.
Yeah, right now.
Growth is slowing.
Right.
They're projecting slower growth.
I totally agree. Believe me, as town manager, I welcome that. Because when I first came on board, there was 750 homes planned to be under construction, which was Hunsinger Farms, Carrot Glen, and the Falls. 750 homes, do I have the number right? Am I close? Am I low?
Yeah.
Those were under construction and they were going busters. And then all of a sudden, the interest rates came in at a higher rate and it all slowed down. I was like, thank God we can take a breath. Because it was crazy. He was doing inspections. The other thing that was really bad that was going on, when they were building that fast, the quality was plummeted, right? He had garage doors that would close and the gap between one and the other, one would be crashing into the concrete, the other one would have a gap that big. He had to have them reframe 3 homes. They put in 100 water meters, pointed in the wrong direction. 100. How can you mess that up? But the directions are on it, you know, you point it this way towards the house. I don't know how you can mess it up, but it was chaos. So I'm like, oh my God, what did I step into? Right? Then the interest rates came in, things started slowing down. We all got our breath. And that's why we had time to make up a presentation.
Louder.
I have a question about those of us who are on the well and septic. Will there be a hookup fee? I know when my parents were annexed into Anderson, there was a $10,000 for them to put their sewer into the Anderson City sewer, and they didn't have a choice in that. Is that going to be a fee that we have in addition to the increase in taxes?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm glad that you asked. So there's actually a couple of questions there. So, like I said earlier, you know, we want growth to pay for itself. So if a developer comes in and it's in the incorporated area, they would have to pay for the main to run out there. If you're a pre-existing, our policy is, and you want to tap into that water main, then there's no fee for that. Okay. The developer has to pay for the main, and the new homes going in have to have a hookup fee and a system development fee, but the existing does not. That makes sense.
So
There would be no, yeah, you can stay, and by the way, if you want to keep your well water, go for it. No, we don't have a policy that forces anybody
So
into it.
so you need to drill a new well, and you're not allowed to drill a well in Pendleton, correct? You have to hook up to water.
I don't even have municipal water where I live, and I live in the town. And if my well dried tomorrow, I don't think they're gonna rip up the street and run the line to my house.
Why are we having well problems?
Yes.
Well, because as the population goes up, more and more people are tapping into.
We lived out where we lived for 44 years. I lived there 44 years, and we've never had.
Where'd you live?
Northeastern part of the township, southeast,
To live south,
south.
east. Well, I don't think it's, yeah, so that's not
The only
that
problem
popular.
we've ever had was it's an 1800 well and it
Yeah,
seized. We had to put a new one in,
yeah.
which is a normal process.
So,
So is everyone having problems? Who's using the water?
so I think it's mostly where there's a denser population in the township, they're running into problems. In fact, that's the first time I ever was approached was somebody up that lives, Wooded Bridge. What's that subdivision?
That's
White Oaks.
That's where it was.
Yeah, it was White Oaks, and they said, all of a sudden my well's getting muddy, and they tell me I gotta go an extra 100 feet. You know, can we come into town? Can you run a water main out there? And that started this whole
When's
thing.
Anderson drilling their water?
Well, that's a whole different, Anderson's they're trying to look for ground and buy ground in Fall Creek Township because the aquifer, if you can show the map, the aquifer that the new water treatment plant taps into runs
Our water treatment.
our water treatment plant. So there's a huge aquifer. It's deep like most aquifers, and it runs like this. And so Anderson is trying to buy ground right up here.
So it runs along Small Creek.
Yeah, well, yeah, sort of. Yeah, you're right. So, but then there was a thing, okay, Fall Creek Regional Waste District. If you live in Green, Fall Creek, or Adams Township, you're under Fall Creek Regional Waste District. Their rules apply. We have no control other than the town. Just like you, the township has an appointment to the board. We have an appointment to the board. There is no, like I explained with the water. The only people that are gonna have to pay for that, if it goes out in your area, is the developer.
The sewer is different.
Sewer is different.
Sewer, it's a $3,500.
Yeah, they have a hookup fee. And it's,
And you cannot keep your.
and you
septic.
cannot keep your septic, that's right. That's set by Fall Creek Regional Waste.
It's Fall Creek Regional, not Town of Pendleton.
That's right.
Town of Pendleton doesn't have any control over it. It's Fall Creek. If it's all seasonal, you gotta pay.
I don't know this for this.
3,500, I think. they're like that. So several years ago.
They were I don't know if I heard that several.
I think the people on the west side of town are can't hear voluntary.
We can't hear you.
Closer.
I think the people on the west side of town would be more open to voluntary annexation. I'm on the east side and I'm kind of, not so much. So why don't you do it in small chunks rather than try to do it all at once? What, so voluntary?
Oh,
is-
voluntary, people can come in all the time. They can come in anytime they want to do it. Yeah, but it's voluntary.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. You got people that would like. Why don't you do some creative annexation like Ingles? And,
That's why annexation, forced annexation is now illegal. Because of Ingles.
so you put this whole plan together. You talked about what the town of Pendleton residents, what they want, right? And what your quality of life and all the things you're going for. Have you considered that you're talking about adding 140% more registered voters that may not want what you want, and we'll vote you all out and then change your entire plan? I mean, we will so far outweigh what the town of Pendleton is today. We could crush the entire way of life that you guys have established here. So it's it's pretty rough on a two-way street there.
You make the point, there's a risk for the town doing this too.
It's significant.
It is very significant. The township population is twice that of the town, right?
Yeah.
So part of the transition plan should address how election and districts would go, right? I would think that there's definitely should be some districts established for, let's just call it the unincorporated areas, the old unincorporated areas. Absolutely. You know, I mean, if you think about it, that's one of the most important issues. Right now, if you need to change something that's at the county, good luck. Have you ever had a meeting at the county like this? No, I doubt it. Maybe at the drainage board, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Hey, Brett. You got two
Okay, we got one
questions.
back here real quick.
Guys, he's got one back here and then we'll hit you guys.
You talking
Okay.
about a transition plan being part of the referendum. How do people like us get our input into the transition plan that's going to be part of it?
Good question.
Yeah.
So
the committees, I'm sure would have to be made up of people from the town and the township, right? Yeah. It's how, right, so the township and the town would agree, right, they would agree, hey, this committee has 8 people, 4 from the township, 4 from the town. All right, that would be by town council and the town council and the township advisory board.
How do we put a plan together? We'll form this many committees,
Right.
have this many people,
Yep.
volunteer.
Yep.
all.
Yep. And if you want it to pass, you better listen to what you guys are saying, right? Because it won't pass.
Yeah.
So,
You gotta listen to the farmers just the
Right.
same way you're gonna listen to people in
Right.
town.
because if it doesn't meet the needs of if it doesn't come to a good plan, it can't be perfect for everybody. But the reality is, so I've never gotten this question. Why would they feel this is a good thing? Because you're right, it's dangerous for the town. You look at what happened to Zionsville and what they did is all of a sudden you had these massive,
You wanna put that,
yeah,
I
I'm
can
sorry.
say this. real
Yeah.
quick. So all of a sudden,
Right here at 300 West, right here at 67 at the Speedway, right? Already got Anderson to the north. But anyway, we could have a lot of development that we don't want, that's terrible for the hometown feel. And we don't want that, right? The other thing is, as town manager, I'm getting pressure to start running water outside the town. And with the growth we're gonna have, money's tight, And if I have to go tear up a street in White Oaks to run a water main to an unincorporated area, now the town has to buy that street because we have to rebuild that street. We cannot afford it. But then how do I sit here and go, no, you can't have water, when guys I grew up with say they're sucking lead right now? You know, how do you respond to that? If you put all those factors together, I've seen a lot of growth, civil engineering business for 20 years. I lived in LA. I was stationed in LA when I was in the Marine Corps. I was stationed in Washington, DC. I drove out all these places that had massive growth. And if you don't get ahead of it, it is going to swallow you, and Pendleton won't be Pendleton anymore. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Hang on a minute,
I got a little bit of mix.
hang on a minute.
I'm not quite understanding maybe. So you as a planning committee or a development committee, so you are trying to merge all of Fall Creek into the town? Yes or no?
Okay, that's a good question.
You got another question? Paul?
And if yes, how? I mean, are all of you in favor of that, or? Because it seems to me like if you've got a couple people up in the northeast that want to be brought in or concerned, you've got maybe one or two down here to the south that maybe need water. Why don't you address their needs and don't involve everyone else? Because you're probably going to get a 99% negative response for the rest of Fall Creek.
So I can't speak for the town council members. I'll hand the mic in a second. And I can't speak for the members of the township board. As town manager, so I was civil engineer for 20 years, right? And I had 30 years in the Marine Corps, and I was, for 10 years, I was stationed. So for me, yes, because I don't know how I look at that, when I look at Pendleton.
You want to take in the whole, all of Fall Creek into the town.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
This is my opinion. I can't speak for the town council or the town board. But for me, growing up here, right, I consider all that Pendleton. Incorporated or unincorporated, that's my community.
Is
That's
that
what-
Silver Farms and Annex now?
Hunsaker Farms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why are you letting them build the houses they're building if you want to put these restrictions on?
Because those were already put in place before we increased the standards, the architectural standards. So those wouldn't be allowed now, but that they were already accepted by the time the UDO is only 6 months old. 18 months old, sorry.
And
time flies.
all your future development is probably most of it, 90% of it's going to be around the interstate. That's where you need to concentrate.
No, it's gonna go where farmers sell the ground. That's where it's gonna go. for.
How many of the farmers here are gonna sell their ground? Yeah, who's selling?
We have a lot of developers come in here. and They have options on the ground.
We're not selling to anybody.
Well, that's probably true in your case.
It is. We're not going anywhere.
So did you grow up in town or in the country, Scott?
So I grew up in town.
Right, I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I moved back after 25 years of being gone, but I was born and raised here. Family been on the farm for 200 years.
Yeah.
I don't go near Pendleton.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't like Pendleton anymore because of the congestion, the overpopulation, the streets, there's accidents all the time. The overcrowding is insane. I go to Greenfield, I go to Fishers, I go everywhere else if I need.
So
And I don't want that where I grew up.
guess what? It's coming. You can't marry
You
it.
don't know it's coming. You don't know it's coming. You're just projecting.
Let me make a comment.
I got a question.
All right, go ahead.
I want to know, and he brought up a really good point, or she did. I want to know how many of all of y'all sitting there grew up in this town. How many of you grew up in this town, was raised here in Pendleton?
How many grew up in the country?
Because this isn't the Pendleton most of us grew up with.
If you're asking me personally, I'll tell
You
you,
keep talking about small town, the historic historical town. What are you doing for the historical town? You're destroying.
And why
That
did-
falls over there. That's what this is on the registry, is being a historical town. When's the last time it was cleaned? All the silt and all the other stuff down below the falls. When was it taken care of? This town hasn't done anything for that for many, many years.
You want to take care.
The vital homes that's going up there, you saying there's standards. They're still building new every day. Those that they're building new every day are not meeting the standards that you.
That's
were
right.
talking
They
about.
don't because they were approved before the UDO was in place. So
Someone needs to
legally-
step in. I'm in them homes every day.
So
I
legally, we
provide
can't.
services in them homes every day. I'm seeing the quality of that crap that's up there.
And why have meetings?
Who's gonna take care of the infrastructure if you bring Fall Creek, the whole township's under the town? Who's gonna take care of our roads out there?
That's a good.
You
question.
don't have the ability to take care of the infrastructure out there.
Can I answer the road question? So anyway, roads are funded by your gas tax. It's based on road mile. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, but who's gonna take care of, who's gonna plow our roads in the winter time out there like the county does?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
So when the roads that are county come in, if the merger happens, the funding from the motor vehicle highway fund and the local road and street fund then gets transferred, no longer goes to the county, it would go to the town. And so the exact same dollar amount you get now for maintenance of your roads would now come to us as a group, so you would not, you shouldn't see a difference between it. Although you'll get more personal attention because you're not competing against the county highway for the other townships around. So it's the same dollar amount would come in.
So what you're telling me is that dollar amount is gonna allow the town to hire individuals that need to take care of the roads out there and buy the equipment such as the plow trucks and everything else that's gonna be needed to be able to cover all, that out there versus what's coming in town.
I live down on 1000 South. You get to 900 and the roads are clear when it snows. From 900 in town, it is slicker than the devil.
Amen.
By the way, I'm a retired Army vet, okay? You keep bringing up the Marines. I'm retired.
I'm sorry. I get them in that.
How can we find out where the township is, where they're at? So we get more involved in that. People in the township ought to be talking with them. It sounds like it's a long drawn out process, and if we can get more involved with what's happening in the township, this might never happen. Correct?
Yes.
Fred's been waiting all day to say that.
I'm patient. Two things. First, we've talked about the one, the amenities and so forth, those 43 square miles. Not gonna happen. Right? Most of it.
I would disagree.
Okay, that isn't what I thought you said in the meeting.
Would have been.
The town, the amenities that the town has, such as some of the things that's already been talked about. Water, for example. Where are you gonna run water? To all 43 square miles?
Eventually, yes, but I'm sure all of us,
How long is that
yes,
gonna
by the
take?
time that happens. It would go where the development happens is where the water would
Yeah,
go.
okay. See, for example, in Yorktown, that still hasn't happened.
They're not growing like this, like
Yeah,
we're growing.
I get it, but there's certain
We're not gonna put
things.
water in any place where there's
There-
empty
There's
fields.
there's certain things that happen in the town that are amenities that the town has, police protection. Various kinds of things that happen. The question, the first question is, how is that going to get addressed? How long is it going to take to get into 43 square miles?
I don't know, that's up to you.
And then the other question that we haven't looked at yet. If a merger happens, what is the government, the government of the area going to look like?
That's what would be in the plan.
Yeah.
that would be decided, that's what people would vote on. So the plan,
What would the government look like? So that's what why you have, the state requires you to have a transition plan. And that's when you would lay that out.
And like in Anderson.
Fred's still talking.
Like in Anderson, for example. Like in Anderson, means every area in Anderson has representation in the town's council. And you're talking about 43 square miles. And what the town government might look like at that point in time. I would think that that if we develop a plan, the plan would have to include a change in that sort of thing and representation from every area.
Maybe a mayor.
Yeah, you're right. Cities that are found in with population. What is? the
City,
population?
so towns and cities it's not based on population, it's based on cities and towns.
cities and town definition in Indiana are based on structure, not population. Fishers was a town all the way up into, they were up at 90,000. Yeah, so if you go to a mayor and you elect a mayor, then there's two, so there's class one, that's only Indianapolis. Class two city is, you have a mayor, but that comes from, is elected through the town, city council. And then a class, I may have a flip-flop, but class three, yeah, I do have a flip-flop. But the other class is, the mayor is elected wholly on his own. And then you have a city council too. So there's three types of structures. And then in Indiana, you only have towns. Other places, they have villages and towns, and they have, the other states have different definitions. But there would be, by law, there would be representation on the new town council if the merger happened. Would have to be based on population. The township population is twice the town. So,
Hi, Scott, Eric Ross, quick question for you. Keep referring to the plan. And I mentioned this should just a financial plan be done at this point.
So
Am I correct?
the plan, if both the town council and the township board agree to create a transition plan, then you put committees together for different things, park, governance, roads, fire, utilities, fire protection. And then those committees come up with a plan and say, this is how we transition. And the simple example that I gave for would be police, that Zionsville contracted for 3 years with the county sheriff to continue to patrol the town, the new town areas. It gave them Zionsville 3 years to build their police force up so that they could cover that area. So when you do the referendum, you vote on that plan. All right. And if the plan fails, you have to wait a year, and then you can either just abandon the idea or do a new plan and come back and have another referendum on that. But then in all the cases, you have to have both the town council and the township board approve it.
Have you retained some type of firm that's going to help create this financial plan?
So the only thing that we paid for that we're doing is Baker Tilly is doing a parcel by parcel financial study. What would happen if we merged together? What would that do to the tax rate? So a lot of the stuff is neutral, like the example I tried to give about the roads.
Who is the firm?
Baker Tilly,
Baker Tilly? I'm not familiar.
they're one of the accounting
Have
firms.
they worked with Pendleton in the past?
Yeah, they have 200 CPAs. I don't know.
I
how
guess
many-
my concern, municipalities generally, let's put on paper as, this is what's gonna happen, I generally go plus 45%.
Yeah.
Is there any type of talk about using people in the town? There are plenty of people I see that are very qualified to audit what is returned to us.
Yeah.
And make sure it's not garbage.
Yeah.
Because
No, I think
majority of the
that'd be
time,
good.
like anything, they'll tell you what you want to hear. And I think you should. So you really know what we're getting into.
last question, at what point in time, I've heard this, is there any type of environmental impact study that will be done?
I don't know that that's required, but in the transition plan,
We boast that in this
you
town.
could-
Nice, clean.
yeah, you could make that part of your plan. You could address that.
I would think, you're talking about the aquifer and all this, I mean, that all plays into a broader environmental impact study. That's huge.
So it would be.
And that's why even some of that's like money, we have well, water before we pay our bills. All right, thank you. Appreciate your work.
Yep, okay, thanks.
And we got some online questions here that Denise is gonna read.
This one's a little bit more of a statement, they're just seeking a response to their statement. The town is saying that they can protect us with the growth and the county will not have our best interest in protecting us from Anderson growing into our township. Yet building standards still have to pass county inspection.
So.
I can understand that.
Here you go, Scott.
So the county does have building inspectors, but they're spread, I will tell you, spread thin. They do have building standards, but they're not to the detail that we have. And you gotta remember their standards, they're trying to satisfy 460 square miles, right? What works here is gotta work in the areas around Elwood or Somerville. all that. I think we'll go for about another 5 minutes.
Let me make one comment, which, Brett, how long have you worked for the town?
3 years.
3 years. 3 years ago, I went to Brett. We didn't have a building inspector per se. Scott, myself, Brissa wasn't here then, but some of the other members, we knew we had to do something as far as building inspection, fire inspection. And that's when he come on. And a lot of things have changed. We've had to change because of the changes that he has found on there. That goes back to the UDO that Scott's talking about. And everybody knew, I'm sorry, I had surgery on my teeth. Anderson can come in just like Pendleton can come in. They can come right into Fall Creek Township. You look at the red there, that's in Fall Creek Township. Anderson can keep buying property and building coming towards us to get to the water. Greenfield can do it. Portville can move towards us. Yeah, they can, Brett. I'm sorry. Well, but I'm saying, all that they keep buying and it'll happen.
Because we let it happen.
That's the reason why we're sitting
We
here
let
tonight.
Anderson come into Fall Creek Township. We didn't do
That's
anything
prior
to
to the
stop
change
it.
of law,
It's like,
too.
go ahead, take it.
Yeah, just so they put that silly factory in northern Fall Creek Township.
Let's finish the online questions.
Yeah,
What was the other online question?
Will restrictions on size of outbuildings be applied to annexed areas? For example, farm cannot exceed percentage size of home, etc.
That would depend on the transition plan.
Depends on the
And the
transition
zoning.
And the zoning.
and the zoning district and the standards that apply for that. Yeah, agricultural does have a different standard than residential. The third question is, why aren't you considering annexing just the areas of Fall Creek right near I-69? Why does it have to be all of the township?
We've answered that 3 different ways.
Yeah. Merger has to be for the entire township area. Then the section.
We're already there. That was back under old annexation laws. When I was a legislator, trust me on this one, you might have hated everything I did as a legislator, but the one thing I learned about annexation, I was there 11 years, they changed the law, swung it back and forth 3 times. It was not pretty.
What year was that? What year was that?
2000.
2000. Oh, what year did the annexation laws change?
Yeah.
There was one thing when I got there, then it changed to another before I left.
Eight.
I believe it's 2015.
What year were you there?
I think it's 2008.
We'll change again.
So they changed it 4 times.
I was annexed back in 35 years ago. And it wasn't politics.
No, it wasn't.
I think that we proved that we're certainly not gonna have all the answers and not have time to answer everyone's questions, but we put up the website again, it's got their email addresses and whatnot. I know that everybody up here appreciates everybody. It's not gonna happen tomorrow. Careful what you read on the base chat or whatever they're called now, so. But my daughter.
There was still an outstanding question for all the members to answer whether they're all in favor or not.
That's incredibly premature from my perspective. I have no
Then you can
data.
say you don't want to answer.
I can't say that I am or I'm not. I don't have the facts. So until I have the facts, no. But I don't have,
You're in favor of moving forward. Though.
I'm in favor of finding out the truth of the situation and what the implications are and what the timeline is, all of those things. I can't make any kind of assertion on any of it until I have
That's
more
fair.
information.
That's fair enough.
Okay,
No defensiveness.
There isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's a question. to
no,
say
that's fine.
Either you're in favor of moving forward or you're not in favor of moving forward, and it's 3-2, or I don't want to answer.
Oh, I'll
You
answer,
have
but
that-
I
you
just don't
that
have,
right. You have that right.
yeah, I don't have a whole lot to tell you.
How do people find out all the information? 'Cause I just found out last night. No idea. How do all these people find out?
We have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
Just kind of spread word of mouth.
Yeah, we have a Facebook,
Neighbors.
we have a Facebook page. We put all
I know,
this stuff
but
on
what's
it.
more on Facebook?
Fred,
But when is the, yeah, Fred, when did?
When's your guys' Fall Creek Township meeting? Regular scheduled meeting? Fred Gaskell at what?
Don't cast something. All right, I think that's it. People are-
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you coming. Thanks, Kent.